September 1987. The violent confrontation. Bobby attacks George at Whitney's house. September 12, 1987. George went to Whitney's LA mansion to discuss an upcoming charity performance. They were in the living room, talking about the song arrangement, when Bobby arrived unannounced. He had a key. Whitney had given it to him. Bobby walked in and saw George and Whitney sitting close on the couch, laughing. Something snapped. "What the fuck is this?" Bobby's voice was ice. Whitney jumped up. "Bobby, what are you doing here? I live here now, remember? Moved in last week. What's he doing here? We're working on a song. Working. Looks like something else to me." George stood. "Bobby, this is inappropriate. Whitney and I are colleagues." "Colleagues," Bobby spat the word. "You think I'm stupid? I see how you look at her." "You're being paranoid," George said, which was the wrong thing to say. Bobby lunged. He grabbed George by the shirt, slammed him against the wall. "I'm paranoid? I'm paranoid," Whitney screamed. "Bobby, stop! Let him go!" Bobby ignored her, face inches from George's. "I told you to stay away from my woman. You didn't listen." George tried to stay calm. "Get your hands off me." Bobby punched him, hard, in the stomach. George doubled over, gasping. Whitney threw herself between them. "Bobby, stop! You're crazy!" Bobby shoved Whitney aside. Not hard, but enough to move her. He grabbed George by the hair, pulled his head up. "You think you can take her from me? You think your pretty face makes you special?" He punched George again, this time in the face. George's lips split, blood running down his chin. "Bobby, please!" Whitney was crying now, trying to pull Bobby away. George, despite the pain, spoke clearly. "Bobby, I'm not interested in Whitney that way. I'm gay." The words hung in the air. Bobby froze, released George, stepped back. "What?" "I'm gay," George repeated, wiping blood from his mouth. "Whitney and I are friends. Just friends. I'm not your competition." Bobby looked at Whitney. "Is this true?" Whitney, tears streaming, nodded. "Yes. George is gay. We're not romantically involved. We never were." Bobby's anger deflated, replaced by confusion. "Then why? Why are you always together?" "Because he's my friend. My real friend. Someone I can trust. Someone who doesn't want anything from me except friendship." Bobby looked between them, processing. Finally, "He's gay?" "Yes." Bobby laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "All this time I was jealous of a gay man?" "You attacked me," George said quietly, still clutching his stomach. Bobby's laugh died. For a moment, something like shame crossed his face. "Yeah, I did." He walked out without apologizing. But the damage was done. George had been outed to Bobby Brown, and Bobby couldn't be trusted to keep secrets. The next morning, George woke up with a swollen lip and bruised ribs. Whitney called, apologetic and devastated. "George, I'm so sorry. I never thought he'd—" "Oh, it's okay," George said, though it wasn't. "Are you hurt badly?" "I'll survive." "But Whitney, he knows. He knows I'm gay. I know. I'm so scared he'll tell people." "Will he?" "I don't know. I told him if he ever tells anyone, I'll leave him and destroy his career. I think that scared him. But you can't control him forever." Whitney was quiet. "I know." That afternoon, Bobby called George. The conversation was tense, awkward. "Look, man, about last night. You assaulted me," George said flatly. "Yeah, I lost it. I was wrong. Are you apologizing?" "I guess. And I won't tell anyone about, your thing. My thing is called being gay, Bobby." "Right, that. It's not my business." George wanted to believe him but didn't trust Bobby. "If you tell anyone, I won't." Whitney made that very clear. The call ended. George sat in his apartment, processing. His secret was now in the hands of a jealous, violent man with a big mouth. It was only a matter of time before it got out. October 1987. The aftermath. Whitney chooses Bobby, George withdraws. In the weeks following the attack, George and Whitney's friendship changed. They still talked on the phone, but the easy intimacy was gone, replaced by awkwardness and guilt. "I can't see you anymore," Whitney said during one call. "Bobby won't allow it? It's not about permission. It's about keeping peace. He's unstable. If he sees us together, I don't know what he'll do." George understood, but it hurt. "So that's it? Our friendship ends because Bobby's insecure?" "It's not ending. Just pausing." But they both knew it was more than a pause. Whitney had made her choice, Bobby Brown over George Michael, safety and convention over truth and friendship. November 1987. Whitney and Bobby went public with their relationship. The tabloids loved it. Whitney Houston's new bad boy boyfriend. George watched from the sidelines, nursing his emotional wounds. His album Faith was released that month and became a massive success. But George felt hollow. He'd lost one of his only real friends. December 1987. George tried to move on. He threw himself into work, touring, promotion. But the loneliness was crushing. He'd briefly had someone who understood him. And now she was gone. Whitney called on Christmas. "I miss you," she said, voice small. "I miss you too. Can we still be friends? Secretly? I don't think that's wise, Whitney. Bobby already attacked me once. I'll make sure he never knows." George sighed. "Whitney, you're choosing to stay with a man who beat me up because he was jealous. What does that say?" Whitney was quiet. "Then it says I'm a coward. I know what I should do. Leave Bobby, live my truth, be with people who really love me. But I can't. I'm not brave enough. Then we can't be friends," George said, hating himself for it. "Because I can't watch you destroy yourself." Whitney started crying. "I'm sorry, George, for everything." "Me too." They hung up. It would be 2 years before they spoke again. But here's the shocking truth. Whitney's relationship with Bobby became abusive. And George tried to save her, almost dying in the process. 1988. Whitney and Bobby's relationship deteriorated into chaos. Bobby's jealousy, drug use, and violence escalated. Whitney started using cocaine, covering bruises with makeup, lying to her family and friends. The industry whispered, but nobody intervened. George heard rumors and felt sick with guilt. "I should have fought harder to stay in her life," he told Elton John. "Maybe I could have helped." Elton, cynical and wise, shook his head. "You can't save someone who won't save themselves." June 1989. Whitney called George out of the blue, sobbing. "George, I need help." "What happened?" "Bobby, he's out of control. Drugs, violence. Last night he put his hands around my neck. I thought he was going to kill me." George's blood ran cold. "Whitney, you need to leave him, now." "I can't. Everyone thinks we're the perfect couple. If I leave, questions will be asked. My mother will be disappointed. The church? Fuck the church!" George yelled, something he rarely did. "This man is going to kill you." "I know," Whitney whispered. "That's why I'm calling. Can you help me? Help me leave him?" George didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'll help you." They made a plan. George would fly to LA, help Whitney pack her essentials, get her out of the house while Bobby was on tour. They'd go public together. Whitney would announce she was leaving Bobby, and George would support her. It was risky, but necessary. July 2nd, 1989. George flew to LA. He went to Whitney's house in the afternoon. Bobby was supposed to be in New York for a show, but Bobby had canceled the show. He was home. When George rang the doorbell, Bobby answered. "You?" Bobby's eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated. High on something. "Bobby, I'm here to see Whitney. She called you, didn't she? Asked you to help her leave me?" George's stomach dropped. Bobby knew. "Bobby, let me explain." Bobby grabbed George by the throat, slammed him against the doorframe. "You think you can take her from me? Again?" George couldn't breathe. Bobby's grip was crushing his windpipe. Whitney appeared behind Bobby, screaming, "Bobby, let him go! You're going to kill him!" Bobby squeezed harder. George's vision started going black. He clawed at Bobby's hands but couldn't break the grip. Whitney grabbed a vase from the hallway table and smashed it over Bobby's head. Bobby released George, stumbled backward, touched his head. Blood. George collapsed to the ground, gasping, coughing. "You bitch!" Bobby advanced on Whitney, but she ran, locked herself in the bedroom. Bobby pounded on the door. "Open this door! Open it!" George, still on the ground, pulled out his cell phone. New technology, bulky, and dialed 911. "Police! Need police! 11234 Beverly Glen! Domestic violence! Hurry!" Police arrived in 8 minutes. Bobby was arrested for assault on George? Not Whitney. Whitney refused to press charges against Bobby. "It was an accident," she told police, lying. George had visible bruises on his neck, but also didn't press charges. "Just get me out of here," he told police. The incident was kept out of the media through aggressive legal work by both Whitney and George's teams. If this gets out, It ruins everyone, Whitney's lawyer said. Bobby gets arrested. Whitney looks like a victim. George's involvement raises questions. So it was buried. Another secret. Another lie. George flew back to London that night. He and Whitney never spoke about it. Never spoke about anything again, actually. Their friendship was officially over, killed by Bobby Brown's violence and Whitney's inability to leave. The tragic ending. Whitney stayed with Bobby, married him, and slowly destroyed herself. July 18, 1992. Whitney Houston married Bobby Brown. The wedding was lavish, televised, celebrated. George watched from London, heartbroken. She made her choice, he told his friend. The wrong choice. 1992-2006. Whitney and Bobby's marriage was a public disaster, drug addiction, domestic violence, financial ruin. Whitney's voice deteriorated, her career collapsed, her image shattered. She became a cautionary tale. George tried to reach out several times over the years. Letters sent to Whitney's management, calls that went unreturned. In 2000, he sent a letter. Whitney, I don't know if you'll read this, but I want you to know I forgive you for choosing Bobby. I understand why you did it, and I want you to know that if you ever need a friend, a real friend, I'm here. Always. Whitney never responded. But years later, after her death, that letter was found in her personal safe. She'd kept it. February 11, 2012. Whitney Houston was found dead in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, drowned with cocaine and prescription drugs in her system. The world mourned. George Michael was devastated. At a concert 3 days after her death, George broke down on stage. I lost a friend today. Someone I loved very much. Someone I failed to save. He told the audience about their friendship, carefully, without revealing too much. Whitney was trapped by her image, by expectations, by people who didn't understand her. I tried to help, but I wasn't enough. I'll always regret that. December 25, 2016. George Michael died. Some believe the grief of losing Whitney 4 years earlier contributed to his decline. He never recovered from her death, said someone close to George. He felt responsible somehow. Like if he'd fought harder, stayed in her life, maybe she'd still be alive. The final truth. 2 closeted superstars found each other, fell in love, platonically, and were torn apart by industry pressure and Bobby Brown's violence. George Michael and Whitney Houston's relationship wasn't what the media thought. It wasn't romance, but it was real love, the kind that transcends sexuality, the kind built on mutual understanding and shared pain. 2 people trapped in closets pretending to be something they weren't, finding brief refuge in each other. Bobby Brown didn't understand it. The media didn't understand it. Even their families didn't understand it. But George and Whitney understood. And for 2 years, that understanding gave them both strength, until it didn't, until violence and fear and industry pressure ripped them apart. Both died too young, Whitney at 48, George at 53. Both left behind questions about what their lives could have been if they'd been free to live authentically. I loved Whitney, George said in 2004, not romantically, but truly. She was my sister, my confidant, my mirror. We saw each other completely. And that kind of love is rare. I'll never have it again. He was right. He never did. Some loves are romantic, some loves are platonic, and some loves like George and Whitney's are indefinable, existing in a space between friendship and something deeper. Those are often the loves we lose, and the ones we never stop mourning. February 14th, 1987. Valentine's Day. The Grammys after party at Beverly Hills Hotel. George Michael had just won his first Grammy for I Knew You Were Waiting for Me, his duet with Aretha Franklin. He was 23 years old, on top of the world, and terrified. Terrified because he was gay in an industry that would destroy him for it. Terrified because everywhere he went, women threw themselves at him and he had to pretend interest. Terrified because he was living a lie and it was crushing him. Then he saw her across the room. Whitney Houston, 23 years old, the most beautiful voice in the world, America's sweetheart, the girl every man wanted. She was surrounded by admirers, but her eyes found George. She smiled. He smiled back. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, understanding. 2 people hiding the same secret. What happened next would become one of music's most closely guarded mysteries. A relationship that was real but not romantic, intimate but not sexual, necessary but ultimately tragic. For 2 years, George, Michael, and Whitney Houston were inseparable. The media called them the golden couple. Tabloids speculated about engagement. Fans shipped them relentlessly. But the truth was far more complex. Both were closeted, George gay, Whitney bisexual leaning toward women. Both were prisoners of their public images. And both found in each other something they desperately needed, someone who understood. But the relationship would end in threats, violence, and Bobby Brown's jealous rage that nearly killed George Michael. February 1987, the meeting. You're like me, aren't you? That Grammy night, George and Whitney ended up talking in a quiet corner away from the party chaos. Congratulations on your win, Whitney said, voice warm but eyes guarded. You too, George replied. Whitney had won for greatest love of all. They made small talk, music, touring, fame, but there was a tension underneath, like they were both waiting for the other to say something real. Finally, Whitney leaned close, voice barely audible over the music. Can I tell you something? Of course. This, she gestured to the party, the industry, the whole charade. It's exhausting, isn't it? Pretending all the time. George's heart stopped. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? What do you mean? Whitney looked directly at him. You know what I mean. You're like me, aren't you? George could have denied it. Should have denied it. They barely knew each other. But something in Whitney's eyes made him trust her. Yes, he whispered. I'm like you. Whitney's shoulders relaxed, like she'd been holding tension for years. Thank God. I thought I was going crazy. Everyone around me is so straight, so fake. I needed to meet someone real. They talked for 3 hours that night. Whitney told George she'd known she was attracted to women since she was a teenager. But my mother, Kissy Houston, you know her. She's deeply religious. If she knew, she'd disown me. And my career, I'm America's sweetheart. The girl next door. If people knew I liked women, it would be over. George shared his own story. I've known since I was 12, but Wham is built on the heartthrob image. Girls screaming, crying, wanting me. If they knew I was gay, they'd feel betrayed. My career would collapse. Whitney nodded. So what do we do? Just keep pretending forever? I don't know, George said. But it's lonely, isn't it? Being surrounded by people but completely alone. Whitney's eyes filled with tears. So lonely. They made a pact that night. Let's be friends, Whitney proposed. Real friends. No pretending with each other. When we're together, we can be ourselves. George agreed. And maybe, Whitney smiled through tears, we can help each other. You know, appear together in public. Give the media what they want. Take the pressure off. George understood immediately. A fake relationship. Public appearances together to satisfy the tabloids while privately living their real lives. It was perfect. Are you sure? George asked. I'm sure, Whitney said. I need a friend. A real friend. And you do too. But here's something you don't know. The relationship wasn't entirely fake. George and Whitney genuinely loved each other. Just not the way the world thought. March 1987. George and Whitney started being seen together publicly. Dinner at Spago in LA. Walking hand in hand on Rodeo Drive. Attending each other's concerts. The tabloids went wild. Whitney Houston and George Michael. Music's hottest new couple. Will they get engaged? America's sweetheart falls for British heartthrob. The plan was working perfectly. Both their teams approved. Good publicity, wholesome image, perfect for both brands. But behind the scenes, the relationship was evolving into something unexpected. Not romance, but genuine intimacy. Whitney became my closest confidant, George would later tell a friend. I could tell her things I couldn't tell anyone else. My fears, my desires, my secrets. She never judged. She just understood. Whitney felt the same. George was the only man I ever trusted completely, she told her friend Robin Crawford years later. He didn't want anything from me, didn't want sex, didn't want to control me, didn't want to change me, he just wanted to know me, the real me. They spent hours on the phone, sometimes talking about music, sometimes about their hidden lives. George told Whitney about his anonymous encounters with men, the shame and thrill mixed together. Whitney told George about her relationship with Robin Crawford, her childhood friend and secret lover. Robin is the love of my life, Whitney confessed one night. But I can never be with her publicly. My mother would die. The church would reject me. My career would end. George held her hand. I understand. Completely. Do you have someone? Whitney asked. Someone you love but can't be with? Not yet, George said. But I hope someday. There were even moments of physical affection, but not sexual. They'd cuddle on couches watching movies. Whitney would rest her head on George's shoulder during car rides. George would hold Whitney when she cried about the pressure. It was intimate without being romantic, a witness from their circle recalls. They loved each other, genuinely, just not in a heterosexual way. April 1987. The rumors intensify. When will they get engaged? As spring arrived, the media pressure intensified. Every magazine wanted the love story. Entertainment Tonight interviewed them together. So, are you two dating? The reporter asked with a knowing smile. George and Whitney exchanged glances. They'd rehearsed this. We're very close friends, Whitney said diplomatically. Best friends, George added. But you're seen together constantly, holding hands, looking very intimate. Whitney laughed, that famous Whitney laugh. We enjoy each other's company. Is that a crime? Are you in love? The direct question. Whitney looked at George. George looked at Whitney. Yes, George said honestly. I love Whitney very much. And I love George, Whitney confirmed. It wasn't a lie. They did love each other. The media just misunderstood the nature of that love. The interview aired and speculation exploded. George Michael admits he loves Whitney Houston. Engagement coming soon? George's manager called, ecstatic. This is brilliant. Your album sales are going to skyrocket. Whitney's mother, Sissy, called, concerned. Whitney, is this serious? Are you really involved with this man? Mom, George is a good friend. Friend? The whole world thinks you're going to marry him. Let them think what they want, Whitney said, frustration creeping in. It's nobody's business. But Sissy pushed harder. You need to settle down, Whitney. Find a good man. Get married. Have children. That's what good Christian women do. I know, Mom, Whitney said, exhausted. The pressure was coming from all sides. George faced similar pressure. His father, Kyriakos, was thrilled about the Whitney rumors. Finally, a nice girl. When are you bringing her home? Dad, we're not. Don't be shy, George. She's beautiful, talented, perfect for you. George couldn't tell his father the truth. Couldn't say I'm gay and Whitney's my cover. So he just smiled and changed the subject. The burden of the lie was getting heavier. May 1987, George and Whitney escaped to New York for a weekend, away from LA, away from the pressure. They stayed at the Carlisle Hotel in separate rooms but spent most of the time together. Saturday night, they ordered room service and just talked. I'm exhausted, Whitney admitted. Keeping up this facade, it's draining me. Me too, George said. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. The fame, the money, is it worth living a lie? Whitney was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, but what's the alternative? Come out and lose everything? Maybe we wouldn't lose everything, maybe. George, be realistic. You know what would happen. You'd be blacklisted. I'd be rejected by the black church community. Our careers would be over. George knew she was right. 1987 wasn't ready for openly gay pop stars. So we just keep pretending? For now, Whitney said, until the world changes, or until we can't do it anymore. But here's where everything changed. Bobby Brown entered the picture, and he was jealous, possessive, and violent. June 1987. Whitney met Bobby Brown at the Soul Train Music Awards. Bobby was a rising R&B star, bad boy image, smooth dancer, charismatic. He was immediately attracted to Whitney. Hey, beautiful. When are you going to leave that British pretty boy and get with a real man? Bobby's pickup line was arrogant, but Whitney found it refreshing. Someone direct, uncomplicated, not hiding anything. They started dating, secretly at first because Whitney was still with George publicly. But Bobby quickly became obsessed and possessive. Why are you still seeing George? Bobby demanded after their third date. He's my friend, Whitney explained. Friend, you're holding hands with him in every magazine. It's complicated, Bobby. Uncomplicate it. Choose, him or me. Whitney was trapped. She genuinely cared about George, but Bobby represented something different. A public heterosexual relationship that would satisfy everyone. Her mother, the church, the media, and Bobby was pursuing her aggressively, making her feel wanted in a way George never could. July 1987. Whitney called George, voice shaking. "I need to tell you something. I'm seeing someone. Bobby Brown." George felt a pang, not jealousy exactly, but loss. "Are you serious about him?" "I don't know yet. But he's persistent. And George, he's straight, completely straight. I could actually have a normal relationship with him." "Normal?" George repeated, hurt in his voice. "You know what I mean. A relationship I can show the world." George understood, but it still stung. "So what does this mean for us?" "I don't know. Bobby doesn't like you. He's jealous. He wants me to stop seeing you." "Whitney, be careful. I've heard things about Bobby. He's got a temper." "I can handle it," Whitney said, though she didn't sound convinced. August 1987. The situation escalated. Bobby confronted George at an industry party. "Stay away from my girl," Bobby said, chest puffed, aggressive. "Whitney's not your property," George replied calmly. "Oh, you think you're better than me? British pretty boy? I think Whitney can make her own choices." Bobby stepped closer, invading George's space. "She's made her choice. Me, not you. So back off before you get hurt." George didn't back down. "Are you threatening me?" Security intervened before it became physical, but the message was clear. Bobby saw George as a rival and would eliminate the competition by any means necessary. Whitney tried to manage both relationships. She'd see Bobby publicly, see George privately, but it was unsustainable. Bobby's jealousy grew more intense. He'd check Whitney's phone, question her about where she'd been, accuse her of cheating with George. "I'm not sleeping with him," Whitney insisted. "Then why do you keep seeing him?" "Because he's my friend. Friends don't look at each other the way you two do." Bobby's intuition was partially correct. There was intimacy between George and Whitney, just not sexual. But Bobby couldn't understand that kind of connection.